6 police officers crashed through my gate at 11 p.m. sharp. Flashlights blinded me, weapons drawn. "Hands behind your head! Get on your knees!" The gravel bit into my kneecaps as I dropped down, heart hammering against my ribs. Behind the cops stood 2 identical blonde women in matching pink sweaters, Karen Thompson and her twin sister Lisa, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. "That's him," Karen squeaked, pointing her manicured finger at me. "The one terrorizing our neighborhood," Lisa chimed in, her voice identical to her sister's. "You ever felt your whole world flip upside down in 10 seconds? That's exactly what happened to me that night." The lead officer, a young guy with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. "Jack Morrison, you're under arrest for operating an illegal military training facility on private property." "What the hell are you talking about?" I managed to get out before they yanked my arms back. The handcuffs clicked shut, cold metal against my wrists. Karen waved a manila folder like she was conducting an orchestra. "We have photographic evidence of weapons training, Sergeant. This man has been running unauthorized combat exercises right here in our peaceful suburb." My head spun. Weapons training, combat exercises. I run a PTSD support group for veterans in my backyard. We do breathing exercises and light physical therapy with rubber training equipment. Nothing more dangerous than foam pool noodles. "Those aren't weapons," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're therapeutic aids for—" "Let's save it for the judge," the sergeant cut me off. 2 officers started walking me toward their cruiser, while the others spread out across my property with flashlights. That's when I saw them, my neighbors. Mrs. Chen from next door, the Wilsons from across the street, even old Pete from the corner house. They'd all come out to watch the show. Some had their phones up, recording. The blue and red lights painted everyone's faces like we were in some twisted carnival. Karen stepped closer to the growing crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to see what we've been dealing with. This is why your property values have been dropping. This is why our children can't play safely in their own yards." She held up a photograph. Even from where I stood, I could see it was my backyard during one of our group sessions. But the angle made it look sinister. The foam training equipment looked like real weapons in the grainy photo. "Where did you get that?" I called out. Lisa smirked. "Public safety is everyone's responsibility, Mr. Morrison." The officers loaded equipment from my garage into their van. My foam padding, resistance bands, even the folding chairs we use for group discussions. Everything that helped my fellow veterans cope with their demons, now labeled as evidence in some fictional military conspiracy. Mrs. Chen shook her head as they pushed me into the back seat. "I never would have guessed," she muttered. "He seems so normal." Normal. 40 years of military service, 3 tours overseas, countless nights helping broken soldiers find their way back to civilian life. And now, I was the neighborhood psycho. As the cruiser pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Karen and Lisa standing on my front porch like they owned the place. They weren't just identical twins. They were identical predators. And somehow, I'd just become their prey. The worst part, I had no idea why. But sitting in that back seat, watching my life crumble in the rearview mirror, I realized something that would have scared those sisters if they'd known. You don't survive what I've survived by giving up when things get tough. They'd just picked a fight with the wrong veteran. The car turned the corner and my house disappeared from view. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The county holding cell smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I'd been there 6 hours when my lawyer finally showed up. Rebecca Martinez, sharp as a blade and twice as expensive. She slid a folder across the metal table between us. "Jack, this is worse than I thought." Her voice carried the lawyer tone, controlled panic wrapped in professional calm. "They're charging you with operating an unlicensed weapons facility, disturbing the peace and violation of residential zoning codes." I flipped through the paperwork, page after page of official complaints, all dated within the last 2 weeks, all signed by Karen Thompson. "Rebecca, half these violations are for things that don't even exist on my property." "That's not the problem." She pulled out a thick manila envelope. "This is..." Inside were dozens of photographs, my backyard from every conceivable angle, veterans doing stretching exercises that looked like combat training, group therapy sessions that appeared to be tactical briefings. Even our meditation circle looked like some kind of military formation. The photos were taken with a telephoto lens, probably from the second floor of Karen's house next door. Every image was carefully angled to make innocent activities look threatening. You know how camera tricks work in movies? This was the same thing, but designed to destroy my life. "Who took these?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Karen Thompson submitted them as evidence of ongoing illegal military activities. But Jack, there's something else. Rebecca's expression darkened. "She filed a psychological evaluation report claiming you've been exhibiting signs of severe PTSD and violent tendencies." My blood went cold. She's not a doctor. She can't file psychological reports. She works for Consolidated Insurance. Apparently, she has access to medical records for insurance claim purposes. Rebecca leaned forward. "Jack, she's been building this case against you for months. This isn't some neighborhood dispute. This is a coordinated attack." The puzzle pieces started clicking together. 3 months ago, Karen had started showing up at the grocery store whenever I was there, asking friendly questions about my backyard activities. Always smiling, always curious about my military background. I'd thought she was just being neighborly. She'd been gathering intelligence. "There's more," Rebecca continued. "She's called an emergency homeowner association meeting for tomorrow night. She's pushing for a vote to ban all therapeutic or military-related activities in the residential zone. She can't do that. My property, my rules. Actually, she can. Your deed has a covenant clause that allows the HOA to restrict activities deemed detrimental to community safety and property values." Rebecca closed the folder. "If that vote passes, you'll be in violation of your mortgage agreement." The room suddenly felt smaller. Karen wasn't just trying to embarrass me or cause trouble. She was trying to take my house. Everything I'd worked 40 years to build. How many votes does she need? "Simple majority, 31 residents." Rebecca's pen clicked nervously against her notepad. "I've counted the houses. She's got 43 potential votes in her favor." I stood up and walked to the small window overlooking the parking lot. Outside, I could see Karen's silver SUV parked in the visitor section. She'd come to watch them process my arrest. The woman was actually enjoying this. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." I turned back to face her. "In your professional opinion, what are my chances of winning this fight through normal legal channels?" She was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. "Honestly, maybe 20%. She's been thorough, Jack. Really thorough. 20%. Those weren't fighting odds. Those were surrender odds." But Karen Thompson had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that because I was older, because I lived quietly, because I helped damage veterans instead of hunting down enemies, that I'd forgotten how to be dangerous. Time to remind her that some skills never fade. "Rebecca, I need you to post my bail." "Jack, what are you planning?" Something that woman isn't going to expect. I sat back down and looked directly into her eyes. "You said she's been building this case for months. Well, she's about to learn what happens when you corner a soldier who's got nothing left to lose." The metal door buzzed as the guard came to escort me back to my cell. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I was smiling. Because Karen Thompson thought she was hunting me. She had no idea she'd just become the prey. The gavel echoed through the packed school auditorium like a gunshot. 67 residents crammed into folding chairs, all eyes burning into me as I walked down the center aisle. Karen Thompson stood at the makeshift podium, wearing a navy blue power suit that screamed authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying that fake sweetness that makes your teeth ache. "We're here tonight because our community's safety has been compromised." I took a seat in the back row. Every head turned to stare. Mrs. Chen whispered something to her husband. The Wilsons shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I was the neighborhood pariah now, thanks to Karen's masterful PR campaign. Her sister Lisa sat in the front row, identical blonde bob catching the harsh fluorescent lights. She held up a poster-sized photo of my backyard, the same manipulated image that had gotten me arrested. From this angle, my foam training equipment looked like an armory. "This man," Karen pointed directly at me, "has been operating an illegal military training facility 50 yards from where your children play." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone in the middle section actually gasped. I started to stand up, but Rebecca grabbed my arm. "Not yet," she whispered. Let her finish digging her own grave. Karen clicked to the next slide on her presentation. It was a medical report, my medical report. Jack Morrison has been diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He's been prescribed medications for anxiety, depression, and anger management. My hands clenched into fists. Those records were supposed to be confidential. How the hell did she get access to my private medical files? Furthermore, Karen continued, Mr. Morrison has been hosting groups of similarly unstable veterans on his property. Men trained to kill, gathering regularly, practicing combat techniques. That's when I'd heard enough. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor. Every eye in the room locked onto me. Ma'am, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I'd like to respond to these allegations. Karen's smile faltered for just a second. This isn't a trial, Mr. Morrison. This is a community safety meeting. Then let the community hear both sides. The crowd started murmuring. A few people nodded. Even in a lynching, Americans still believe in fair play. Karen had no choice but to step aside. I walked to the podium, feeling the weight of every stare. These people had been my neighbors for 8 years. I'd helped the Johnsons move their piano. I'd fixed Pete's fence after the storm last spring. Now they were looking at me like I was some kind of monster. My name is Jack Morrison, I began. I served this country for 40 years, 3 combat tours, 2 Purple Hearts, and a chest full of medals I never talk about, because real soldiers don't need to brag. I paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Some of the older men, the ones old enough to remember what service really meant, were nodding slowly. What I run in my backyard isn't a military training facility. It's a support group for veterans who come home broken and need help putting the pieces back together. My voice grew stronger. We do breathing exercises. We talk about nightmares. We help each other remember that we're more than the wars we fought. Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, wiped her eyes with a tissue. But Ms. Thompson here, I gestured toward Karen, decided that helping damaged soldiers was somehow a threat to your property values. So she spent months taking secret photographs, filing false reports, and apparently accessing my private medical records through her insurance company. Karen's face went red. Those records are relevant to community safety. Those records are illegal to share, I shot back. You violated federal privacy laws to build your little case against me. The crowd was shifting now. People were whispering to each other, and the tone was changing. Karen could feel it too. She stepped forward, her voice rising. Don't let him manipulate you. This man is dangerous. His own psychiatric evaluation proves. My psychiatric evaluation, I interrupted, says I've made remarkable progress dealing with combat trauma through community service and helping other veterans. But you only read the parts that served your agenda. That's when Tom McKenzie, the barber who cut half the men's hair in this room, stood up from the third row. Karen, I've got a question for you. She turned toward him, clearly not expecting an interruption from her own audience. 2 weeks ago, I saw you leaving City Hall with Inspector Hartley. You two seem mighty friendly for people who supposedly just met. Tom crossed his arms. Care to explain what that was about? The room went dead silent. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This wasn't part of her script. I don't know what you're insinuating, she started. I'm not insinuating anything, Tom said. I'm asking a direct question. What business do you have with the city's building inspector? That's when I saw it. The flash of panic in Karen's eyes, the quick glance she shot toward the exit, the way Lisa suddenly found something fascinating to stare at on the floor. This wasn't just about my support group. This was about something bigger, something worth violating privacy laws and orchestrating elaborate frame jobs. And Tom McKenzie, bless his suspicious barber soul, had just given me the thread I needed to unravel Karen's entire scheme. You know what, folks? I said, stepping away from the podium. I think we should table this vote until we get some answers to Tom's very reasonable question. The crowd erupted in voices, some agreeing, others demanding the vote proceed. But Karen Thompson was no longer in control of her own meeting. She'd just made her first real mistake, and in my experience, the first mistake is usually followed by several others. Time to start pulling that thread. Tom McKenzie's barbershop smelled like aftershave and old leather, the kind of place where men still talk straight. I pushed through the door at 7 a.m., knowing Tom would be there early prepping for his morning rush. Figured you'd show up, he said, not looking up from sharpening his razor. Coffee's fresh. I poured myself a cup and sat in the waiting chair. Tom, I need to know exactly what you saw at City Hall. He stopped stropping the razor and looked me dead in the eye. Jack, I've been cutting hair in this town for 32 years. I know when people are up to something. He set the razor down carefully. Karen and that inspector weren't just chatting about the weather. What kind of not chatting? The kind where she handed him a fat envelope and he handed her a stack of papers. Tom wiped his hands on a towel. Then they shook hands like they just closed a business deal. My blood started heating up. Any idea what kind of papers? Couldn't see specifics, but they looked official. City letterhead, lots of stamps. Tom started sweeping already clean floors, a sure sign he was thinking hard. But here's the thing that's been eating at me. 3 days later, Karen bought the Henderson place. The Henderson property. 2 acres of prime lakefront land right next to mine. Been on the market for 8 months with no buyers. Too expensive for most folks, too small for developers. She bought it cash, Tom continued. Whole neighborhood's been talking about it. Where's a claims adjuster? Get that kind of money. I felt pieces clicking into place like a rifle being assembled in the dark. Tom, what's the Henderson place worth? Listed for $450. She paid $420, closed in 2 weeks. He stopped sweeping and looked at me. Jack, there's something else. My cousin Eddie works at the county assessor's office. Says there's been unusual activity around your property records. What kind of activity? The kind where someone's been pulling files, making copies, asking questions about water rights and environmental restrictions. Tom leaned on his broom handle. Someone's been doing homework on your land, Jack. Deep homework. Water rights. That's when the real picture started forming. My property wasn't just valuable because of the house. It was valuable because of the private lake. Spring-fed, crystal clear, completely contained within my property boundaries. In a drought-prone region, that kind of water access was worth a fortune. Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully. I set down my coffee cup. In your expert opinion as a man who hears everything in this town, what are the chances Karen Thompson suddenly developed a passionate interest in neighborhood safety right around the time the Henderson place went up for sale? His weathered face split into a grin. About the same chances as me sprouting wings and flying to Mars. The bell above the door chimed, and old Pete Williams shuffled in for his weekly trim. Perfect timing. Pete, I called out, you were at that meeting last night. What did you think about all that business with Karen and the inspector? Pete settled into the barber chair with a grunt. Thought it was interesting how she had all those professional photos of your place. Quality equipment, those shots, not something you take with a phone camera. Professional photos cost professional money, Tom added, snapping the cape around Pete's neck. And professional planning, Pete said. The angles, the timing, the way she caught your veterans doing their exercises. Someone spent weeks figuring out the best shots to make you look bad. I stood up, my mind racing. Gentlemen, I think we're looking at this all wrong. This isn't about property values or neighborhood safety. This is about water. Tom and Pete exchanged glances in the mirror. Think about it, I continued. Karen buys the Henderson place right next to my lake, but she can't access the water because it's entirely on my property. However, if I'm forced to sell because of legal troubles, zoning violations, or mortgage defaults, the new owner might be more neighborly about water access, Tom finished. Or the new owner might be Karen herself, buying at a foreclosure discount, Pete added. The three of us sat in silence for a moment, letting the implications sink in. Karen Thompson wasn't just some busybody neighbor with too much time on her hands. She was running a sophisticated real estate scam, using her access to insurance records and her connection to Inspector Hartley to manufacture a crisis that would force me off my land. Jack, Tom said quietly, if that's true, then last night's meeting wasn't about voting you out. It was about establishing a public record of community concern, documentation for legal proceedings. My phone buzzed. Text message from Rebecca Martinez. Emergency court hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. today. Karen filed for injunctive relief citing imminent community danger. Judge Morrison wants immediate cessation of all activities on your property. I showed the text to Tom and Pete. Tom whistled low. She's not wasting time, Pete observed. Strike while the iron's hot. I stood up and headed for the door. Gentlemen, thank you for the coffee and the conversation. You've helped me understand what I'm really fighting. Jack, Tom called out as I reached the door. Whatever you're planning, be careful. People who orchestrate this kind of scheme don't give up easy. Neither do old soldiers, I replied. But walking back to my truck, I felt the weight of what I was up against. Karen Thompson wasn't just stealing my property. She was stealing my life, my mission, my reason for getting up every morning. Those veterans who came to my group sessions, men who trusted me to help them heal, they'd lose their safe space. Some of them might not survive losing that lifeline. She'd picked the wrong fight with the wrong man, but she'd also proven she was smarter and more ruthless than I'd given her credit for. Time to show her that 40 years of military training teaches you more than just how to follow orders. Sometimes it teaches you how to win wars that nobody else even knows are being fought. The real battle was just beginning. Judge Patterson's courtroom felt like a trap waiting to spring. Karen sat in the front row, wearing her best victim's face, clutching a tissue like she was afraid for her life. Inspector Hartley sat beside her, his city badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Rebecca leaned over and whispered, "Jack, she's got 3 witnesses ready to testify about your threatening behavior. This is looking bad." I watched Karen dab at her dry eyes. Academy Award performance. But I'd spent the morning doing my own homework, and what I'd found was about to turn her little show into a nightmare. "Your Honor," Karen's lawyer began, "my client lives in fear. Mr. Morrison has created a hostile environment that threatens the safety and well-being of the entire Meadowbrook community." He presented blown-up photos of my backyard, the same manipulated images from the HOA meeting. These men gather weekly to practice military tactics. They've been observed conducting surveillance exercises, weapons training, and coordinated movements consistent with paramilitary activities. Judge Patterson studied the photos with a frown. "Mr. Morrison, how do you respond to these allegations?" I stood up slowly. "Your Honor, I'd like to present some evidence of my own." Rebecca looked surprised. We hadn't discussed any evidence. "With the court's permission, I'd like to call Inspector Hartley to the witness stand." Karen's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. Inspector Hartley is here as a witness for the plaintiff, not the defense." "Overruled," Judge Patterson said. "I'll allow it." Hartley walked to the witness stand like a man heading to his own execution. His face had gone pale under his official tan. "Inspector Hartley," I began, "how long have you worked for the city?" 12 years, he answered, his voice barely audible. "And in those 12 years, how many times have you inspected my property?" He shifted uncomfortably. I'd have to check my records." "Let me save you the trouble." I pulled out a manila folder. "According to city records, you've never conducted a single inspection of my property. Not once in 8 years of me living there." Hartley's lawyer started to object, but I continued. "However, you did conduct 3 inspections of the Henderson property in the past 6 months. The property that Ms. Thompson purchased immediately after your final inspection." I held up a document. "This is the final inspection report you filed. It lists several code violations that mysteriously disappeared from the final sale documents." Karen was staring at Hartley like he'd just caught fire. "Inspector," I continued, "are you aware that falsifying municipal inspection reports is a federal crime?" "Your Honor," Karen's lawyer interrupted, "this line of questioning is irrelevant to—" "Actually, it's very relevant," I said, "because those falsified reports were used to artificially depress the Henderson property value, allowing Ms. Thompson to purchase it at below market rates." I turned back to Hartley. "Inspector, did Ms. Thompson pay you to manipulate those inspection reports?" The courtroom erupted. Karen's lawyer was shouting objections. Karen herself had gone white as her sister's matching sweater, but Hartley just sat there, sweat beading on his forehead. "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination," he finally said. Judge Patterson banged his gavel hard. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" But the damage was done. You don't plead the Fifth unless you've got something to hide. "Your Honor," I said, "I have one more piece of evidence." I pulled out a thick folder. "These are copies of insurance claims files that Ms. Thompson accessed illegally through her position at Consolidated Insurance. Files containing private medical information of 17 veterans in our community, including myself." Karen looked like she was about to throw up. "She used this illegally obtained information to build profiles of vulnerable veterans, targeting those who might be perceived as unstable or dangerous. She then used these profiles to orchestrate a campaign of harassment designed to force property sales and manipulate land values. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof of this conspiracy?" I smiled. "Your Honor, I have something better than proof. I have a confession." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Tom McKenzie's voice filled the courtroom, clear as a bell. "Karen, I need to know why you really want Jack Morrison off his property. And don't give me that community safety nonsense. I saw you with Hartley. I know about the Henderson deal. What's this really about?" Then Karen's voice, recorded yesterday when Tom had visited her house with a hidden recording app on his phone. "Okay, fine. You want the truth? That lake is worth millions in water rights. Morrison's too stupid to know what he's sitting on. Once we get him out, Hartley files for a municipal water easement, and suddenly my Henderson property has shared access to the lake. Property values triple overnight." The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop in the hallway outside. Karen shot to her feet. "That recording is illegal. He tricked me." "Actually," Judge Patterson said, his voice cold as winter, "in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And given that you just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, and violation of federal privacy laws, I think we have bigger problems than recording consent." I sat back down, feeling something close to satisfaction, but it wasn't over yet. "Your Honor," I said, "I motion for immediate dismissal of all charges against me, and I request that you refer this matter to the FBI for investigation of federal crimes." Judge Patterson nodded grimly. "Motion granted, case dismissed." He looked directly at Karen. "Ms. Thompson, I strongly suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney." As the gavel came down, Karen Thompson's carefully constructed world collapsed like a house of cards. But looking at her face, the rage, the hatred, the promise of revenge, I knew this wasn't really over. Women like Karen don't go down without a fight, and now I just made myself her number one enemy. The war was about to get very personal. I should have seen it coming, should have remembered that cornered animals are the most dangerous kind. 3 days after the courthouse victory, I woke up to the sound of chainsaws, industrial-grade chainsaws, running at 6 a.m. sharp. I stumbled to my bedroom window and felt my heart drop into my boots. Karen's crew was clear-cutting the Henderson property. Every tree, every bush, every blade of grass between her land and my lake. The beautiful oak grove that had provided natural privacy for 8 years was being reduced to stumps and sawdust. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the signs, dozens of them, planted like tombstones across the devastation. Future site of Meadowbrook Community Water Park. Grand opening summer 2026. I threw on clothes and ran outside. The noise was deafening. Industrial equipment, dump trucks, a full demolition crew working like their lives depended on it. Karen stood at the property line in a hard hat and fluorescent vest, directing traffic like some kind of construction general. "Morning, neighbor," she called out over the roar of machinery. Her smile was pure venom. "Hope we're not disturbing your peaceful morning meditation." I walked over to the chain-link fence they'd erected overnight. "Karen, what the hell is this?" "This," she said, gesturing grandly at the destruction, "is Progress, Meadowbrook's first family entertainment complex. Water slides, wave pools, concession stands. We're projecting 10,000 visitors per day during peak season." My blood went cold. 10,000 people a day. The noise alone would destroy any chance of running therapy sessions. The traffic would turn my quiet street into a highway. Property taxes would skyrocket. Insurance costs would go through the roof. She was going to force me out without breaking a single law. "You can't do this," I said. "The zoning doesn't allow commercial development." Her grin widened. "Actually, it does. I filed for a special entertainment district variance 6 months ago. City Council approved it last week." She pulled out an official document. "All perfectly legal, Jack, just like your little veteran gatherings." 6 months ago. She'd been planning this since before she'd ever filed the first complaint about my support group. Everything, the photos, the court case, the inspector, it had all been a distraction while she worked the real angle behind the scenes. "The noise ordinances," I started, "don't apply to properly licensed commercial enterprises." She was enjoying this. Of course, if the noise bothers you, I'd be happy to discuss purchasing your property. Cash offer, quick closing. You could find somewhere quieter for your activities. That's when I understood. The water park wasn't real. It was a threat. A nuclear option designed to make my life so miserable that I'd sell at whatever price she offered. The chainsaws stopped for a lunch break, and the sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. In the quiet, I could hear something that made my stomach turn. Crying. I looked toward my house and saw 3 of my veterans standing in my driveway. Rodriguez, Williams, and Peterson. They'd come for our Tuesday session and found a war zone instead. Rodriguez, a young Marine who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan, was staring at the destruction with tears streaming down his face. "Jack," he said when he saw me, "what happened to our place?" Our place. That's how they thought of my backyard. Not my property, but their sanctuary. The one spot in the world where they felt safe enough to talk about the nightmares, the guilt, the crushing weight of coming home broken. "I don't know if we can do this anymore," Williams said quietly. He was shaking, not from cold, but from the kind of anxiety that comes from losing the one thing that keeps you grounded. "All this noise, all these people, I can't handle crowds, Jack. You know I can't." Peterson just stood there, staring at the signs advertising the water park. He hadn't spoken in group for 3 weeks, not since his divorce was finalized, but he'd been coming anyway, finding comfort in just being around people who understood. Now, even that was being taken away. I looked at these 3 broken soldiers, then back at Karen's triumphant smile, and something inside me snapped. Not anger, not rage, something colder and more dangerous. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice steady as steel, "go wait in the house. I'll be with you in a minute." They walked away, but I could see the defeat in their shoulders. These men had survived combat zones, improvised explosives, and the hell of trying to rebuild their lives from nothing. But Karen Thompson's greed might be the thing that finally broke them. I turned back to her, and she must have seen something in my face because her smile faltered slightly. "Karen," I said quietly, "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." She stepped closer to the fence, probably expecting me to beg or threaten or break down. Instead, I smiled, the same smile I'd worn in a dozen different countries when I was about to do something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "You've made a tactical error," I said. "You've assumed that because I'm older, because I help damage veterans instead of creating them, that I've gone soft, that I've forgotten certain skills." Her confidence was cracking around the edges. "But here's what you don't understand about soldiers, Karen. We don't just learn how to win battles. We learn how to win wars. And the thing about wars is, they're not won by being loud or obvious or legal." I leaned closer to the fence. "They're won by being smarter than your enemy, by seeing moves they can't imagine, by understanding that sometimes, to save what matters most, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything else." The construction foreman was walking toward us, probably wondering why his boss was having a staring contest with the neighbor. "Enjoy your water park, Karen," I said, turning to walk away. "I hope it's everything you dreamed of." Because she had no idea what was coming. No idea that while she'd been focused on legal maneuvers and bureaucratic games, I'd been researching something that would turn her victory into the biggest mistake of her life. Environmental protection laws. Specifically, the ones that apply to natural spring-fed water systems and the wildlife habitats they support. Karen Thompson was about to learn that some battles are won in courtrooms, but wars are won by people who understand that every system has a weakness. Time to find hers. The Federal Environmental Protection Officer's name was Williams, no relation to my veteran Williams, but built like he could bench press a bulldozer. He stood at the edge of my lake at dawn, holding a clipboard and wearing the kind of expression that makes politicians sweat. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "this is remarkable. How long has this spring system been active?" "According to the Geological Survey, about 3,000 years. I handed him the folder I'd spent 2 sleepless nights assembling. The water flows from an underground aquifer that extends beneath 6 counties. It's the headwater for the entire Meadowbrook Creek system. Behind us, Karen's construction crew was arriving for another day of destruction. Chainsaws, bulldozers, dump trucks full of concrete, everything needed to turn paradise into profit. But they hadn't started their engines yet. Because Williams wasn't just any federal officer. He was EPA enforcement, and I just handed him evidence that Karen's water park would violate the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and about 17 other federal environmental laws she'd never heard of. These water quality reports, Williams continued, flipping through pages, show mineral content consistent with a protected watershed. And this wildlife survey found 3 species of migratory birds that nest exclusively in old-growth timber adjacent to spring-fed lakes, I finished. The same old-growth timber that's being clear-cut as we speak. Williams looked across at the devastation on Karen's property, then back at his clipboard. His pen moved quickly across official forms. Mr. Morrison, I'm issuing an immediate cease and desist order for all construction activities within 500 yards of this water source. Federal environmental protection supersedes local zoning variances. He walked toward the construction site, and I followed at a distance. This was going to be good. Karen was standing next to her foreman, pointing at blueprints and gesturing toward my house, probably explaining which direction she wanted her wave pool to face for maximum noise impact. "Excuse me," Williams called out. "Are you the property owner?" Karen turned with her best professional smile. "Yes, I'm Karen Thompson. Is there a problem, officer?" Williams showed his badge. "Federal Environmental Protection Agency. I need you to cease all construction activities immediately." The smile died on her face. "I beg your pardon? This entire area is now under federal environmental review. Your construction activities threaten a protected watershed and endangered wildlife habitat." He handed her an official notice. "All work stops now. Any violations will result in federal prosecution and fines up to $10 million. Karen's face went through several colors, red to white to green to purple. The foreman was already pulling out his phone, probably calling his supervisor to explain why they were about to lose a 6-figure contract. "This is impossible!" Karen shouted. "I have permits. I have zoning approval. I have city council authorization." "None of which override federal environmental law," Williams said calmly. "Your permits are void. Your zoning variance is suspended pending environmental impact assessment. The city council exceeded their authority by approving development in a protected watershed zone." I watched Karen's $1 million revenge plan crumble in real time. The water park signs looked ridiculous now, advertising a future that would never exist. But that wasn't enough. Not after what she'd put my veterans through. Not after the nights Rodriguez had called me crying because he thought he was losing his safe place. Not after watching Peterson retreat back into the silence that almost killed him. "Officer Williams," I said, stepping forward, "there's something else you should know." Karen shot me a look that could melt steel. "Ms. Thompson purchased this property under suspicious circumstances. There's evidence of municipal corruption, falsified inspection reports designed to manipulate property values for personal gain." Williams raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "The FBI is already investigating, but I think EPA might be interested to know that this construction project was funded through insurance fraud and municipal bribery." That's when Karen finally snapped. 8 months of planning, hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, and all of it turning to ash because she'd underestimated a quiet old soldier who understood that some things are worth fighting for. "You bastard!" she screamed, charging toward me across the torn-up landscape. "You've destroyed everything! Everything!" 2 things happened simultaneously. The construction foreman grabbed Karen's arm before she could assault a federal witness. And Williams added, threatening a federal investigation to his growing list of violations. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "I suggest you contact an attorney, both criminal and environmental." As they escorted Karen away, I walked back to my house where my veterans were waiting on the back porch. Rodriguez, Williams, Peterson, and 3 others who had arrived for our morning session. "Is it over?" Rodriguez asked. I looked out at the federal agents documenting evidence, at the construction equipment being hauled away, at the water park signs already being removed by EPA officials. "It's over," I said. But it wasn't really. Victory always comes with a price. Karen's property would be tied up in federal environmental review for years. My lake was now protected forever, but it was also federal property, managed by EPA guidelines and subject to regular inspections. I'd saved my veterans' sanctuary, but I'd lost something too. The quiet private peace of owning a piece of untouched America. Now there would be federal officers, environmental reports, protected species monitoring. Sometimes winning means everyone loses a little something. "Jack," Peterson said quietly, the first words he'd spoken in a month. "Thank you." Rodriguez nodded. Williams smiled. The others just sat there in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun reflect off the lake that would remain their safe harbor. I'd started this fight to protect my property, but I'd won something more important. I'd protected my purpose. These broken soldiers who trusted me with their pain, their nightmares, their slow journey back to the light. Karen Thompson had tried to steal my life. Instead, she'd reminded me why it was worth living. Some battles are fought for land, some for money, some for pride. But the ones that matter most, those are fought for the people who depend on you to stand between them and the darkness. And those are the battles you can never afford to lose.